Okay. Could you discuss the differences between MTSS Tier 2, Tier 3, and an IEP? Okay. MTSS, for those of you that don't know, it's multi-tiered. Um, I just had that pulled up, but it's multi-tiered. I don't want to get it wrong. Um, Services and support. All right. That's what it is. I could have the acronym a little bit wrong. Yeah, it's a multi-tiered system of supports, okay? Now, in some states, it's called response intervention, the problem-solving team, but it is called RTI, all right, in the federal. So it's the response intervention. It's a precursor. It's a general education program, largely contained inside Every Student Succeeds Act, also No Child Left Behind before that. It is a precursor to special education eligibility. It was intended to try to problem solve student issues so that we were not over-identifying students for the need of special education. Now, it got sort of supercharged in some ways during the Obama administration when they reconfigured No Child Left Behind and called it Every Student Succeeds Act. I think some schools are using the RTI process or MTSS as a mechanism not to identify children that, quite frankly, should be identified as needing specialized instruction under the umbrella of special education. But that's that's an entire different, probably 4-part series, hour-long each series discussion that I would need to sit there and break down what MTSS and RTI is compared to what special education is and why we're having such a disconnect in moving children that are maxing out at Tier 3 and not making progress, why we're not transferring them over or even transferring them over at a much earlier spot in that MTSS or RTI process to special education eligibility consideration. We're just not, the worlds are not meeting like they should or like they were intended or designed to do. So that's something that, that's just government programs that were intended to accomplish some good, but that isn't how they're being treated, okay? So, what is the difference between the two? So MTSS Tier 3 would be, let's say Tier 1, okay? That's where you would start. That would be more whole class. All the students are taught methods that are research-based and shown to be effective, okay? Then there is no requirement for parental consent with this because it's available for all of the students. Now, if your child still isn't making progress toward that Tier 1 intervention, they would move them to Tier 2, which is more of a small group set of interventions, where some students receive more targeted support in small groups. Now you sit there and you go, well, that's more targeted support. Wouldn't that sort of be encroaching on what special education does of more individualized or differentiated instruction? Yes, that's where I'm telling you, these are all gray areas. Where does specialized instruction here end and specialized instruction over here start? And I don't think we have an answer for that right now. We do, but I'm telling you, a lot of schools are abusing this, either intentionally or because of ignorance. Tier 3 would be considered intensive or individualized support. And that's where I'm sitting there going, what the hell is the difference between a Tier 3 intervention, which is individualized support, and special education, which is specialized instruction? Because in order to be qualified for an IEP, you need two things. You need to have a qualifying disability, and you have to be in need of specialized instruction. You cannot be in need of specialized instruction and not have a qualifying disability. Same thing. You can't have a qualifying disability if you're not in need of specialized instruction. If you have a qualifying disability, it's great, but that's what a 504 plan's for. You get that enhancement because you have a qualifying disability and it's been established that you require specialized instruction. So keep that in mind. So Tier 3 intervention, there are children out there, I guess, that don't have a qualifying disability. And so therefore intensive individualized support would be something that they would need. Where we tend to have all of this rear its ugly head is with dyslexia and with other reading or math-based disabilities, to where there's a lot of gray areas and it's just not connecting between these tiers of intervention and then moving the children over to special education. Now also what complicates it further is the Obama administration, when they enhanced RTI or MTSS, had in there some science which has been sort of conflicted. In fact, more recently, that keeping children in RTI, if they have dyslexia or certain specific learning disabilities, that's where they need to be. That's where they're best served, is over here in the RTI process. I don't necessarily agree. Okay, it sort of depends on how this is all designed and how this is all functioning. Because if you're still having a child that is tier 3 needing intensive individualized support, but you're still using, let's say, balanced literacy or whole language approach in whatever you're using, or let's say you are using some peer-reviewed scientifically based reading program, but you're not following it per the directions of the manufacturer or the inventor of the program. Because if you're not using it per the instructions, then you're not doing it correctly and the child isn't receiving the benefit. And that's the most common problem that I have, where schools are saying, well, James, we're using a Norton-Gillingham program. And then when I look at it, well, they're only using it with the kid in a small group twice a week for 30 minutes, when the instructions for Orton-Gillingham is that the instructor using Orton-Gillingham needs to be Orton-Gillingham certified or trained appropriately. And then most of the recommendations are around 4 to 5 times a week for 50 minutes to an hour of intervention, and not necessarily in a small group. So twice a week, 30 minutes, you can sit there and use every peer-reviewed scientifically based reading program or math program you want, but if it's not being used per the instructions in the product that you bought, then you might as well, I mean, it's like baking a cake and it says that it needs a cup of white stuff. Well, is that salt or sugar? Because it makes a big difference between the two. So that's why you follow the instructions as it's written in order for you to get the final product that you bought the recipe for. Okay? So that's the difference between tier 2, tier 3, and that IEP, is that specialized instruction. Okay. What if the school puts a child in tier 3 and not give them an IEP, despite recognizing the child has a disability to a marked degree, adversely affecting their educational performance? I was just talking about that, guys. It happens all the time, to where, especially with dyslexia. That's why sometimes I go crazy telling parents that you don't, sort of a cuss word right now in education. Dyslexia isn't necessarily recognized by some schools as a specific learning disability, because that has a very specific definition under the IDEA. And it's a way for schools to couch that they're following this, but not this. And these, this is more under the Obama administration guidelines of enhancing RTI. This is more of the appropriate venue to serve kids with dyslexia. And they don't necessarily put them under special education. Now, I don't really see that much differentiation between what tier 3 is intended to do and what special education is intended to do and can do. I don't see a lot of the difference. Now, what's going to blow your hair back is that they allowed in the ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ability for schools to tap into special education funding and take it to be able to use for tier 3 intervention, but not give your child an IEP, thus not giving you the right to challenge and not giving you a right as an equal participant as an IEP team member. So those are some substantial things that you miss out on when your child's caught in the revolving door of tier 3 intervention. Stuff we haven't worked out yet, guys. and I'm talking about the government, not me. I mean, I argue this whatever way we need to argue it. And I do have children that I think benefit from that intervention that wouldn't necessarily benefit from the intervention through an IEP. It is a case-by-case individualized base. Even though the child over here that is best served through the RTI process, technically, in my viewpoint, more than would meet that standard over here. But like I said, it is a case-by-case analysis. And it really does determine and turn on what program the school's using, how they're using it, who's implementing it, and then the intent of the district. Are they doing it just to game the system and not identify students? Because if they are, then that's evil and that's wrong. And in that particular situation, shame on you.